Holy shit, that started fast.
Hey, everybody out there! Welcome to Zero Reserve. This is Triple H and the Mongoose bringing you some hot throne action.
What the fuck is going on here?
The first.
This is the 0th episode of Zero Reserve.
Wait,
Is
we
this
lost
music
the
going to
zero
go on
episode.
for literally the entire time, or?
On a snowy, cold Saturday, February 1st, in Roseville, Minnesota.
You fucked it up already,
What?
Groth.
What? Triple H and the Mongoose.
You were supposed to like go into it announcing
Dude.
like it was the World Saturday, but
Fuck it.
then you
Fuck
flip
it.
it at
Okay.
the end,
Fuck it.
And then at the end, what?
and then
Do you have that record? Do you have that like rewind sound?
We're here. Let's just do it.
All right. Play ball.
Let's
Oh,
do it
shit, I
live.
gotta cancel it. Okay.
Fuck it. Do it live.
Okay. So, yeah, this is our Worlds episode, our first episode, right?
Ever.
Our 0th episode.
Oh,
as you
Not the
keep
zero.
saying.
The zero
It's
episode.
the
was
0th
live.
episode. Hopefully, this is the first one people will ever actually listen to, even though it's not.
Am I the
first.
only one that remembers that we actually recorded a zero episode?
No,
I remember.
I do.
I'm repressing
remember.
that memory.
No. That was Dad making us. Dad forced us to do that episode.
Look, Dad is dead.
Okay. Cool, you-
That was when Alex Black tried to make us use outlines and
Exactly.
shit.
Yeah.
Bunch of bullshit.
Goddamn professionalism!
Yeah.
Get that shit out of here.
I mean,
We
hell,
don't need that.
Alejandro even made us on time. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, how's that?
Wow.
How's that Hardee's, by the way?
Fucking delish.
You degenerate buying quesadillas.
Yeah, was the quesadilla the highlight of the meal?
Yeah, it's up there.
Fantastic. Let's talk about worlds, people.
Yeah.
Do it. Let's start with prep, right? That's how
Yeah,
we-
let's start
that's how
with
professionals
let's start with you, Groth. Where the fuck were you?
Yeah, what the fuck?
What the fuck did you have going on? What the
My
fuck
wife
did
got
you have going on?
selfish. My wife got selfish and got pregnant.
Oh.
What?
And I was stuck in a labor delivery room.
That is so
No.
fucking Alicia if I've
I
ever
know,
heard.
right? You
That is
know,
so Alicia.
Jesus.
you know what else is so?
She'll never
so-
hear this.
Yeah,
It's
you know-
fine.
Exactly. She'll never know this happened. Yeah. Also, so Alicia is. She said I couldn't go to Worlds. Like, come on, man. Like,
Well,
it's just my
congrats on
third
the
kid.
sex.
It's just my third kid. Like, seriously. Seen
Look, Thrones will only ever die one time. I mean, you're
That's
talking about
right.
like 5 more kids.
You can have kids all fucking day, every day if you want.
Hey guys, the irony is this: I've never been to Worlds for Thrones, and I've tried 3 different times. Last year, Army got in the way. Year before, something happened. I can't remember. And this year, FFG's like, "Hey, guess what, guys? No longer November. Let's move it to February." Just
move it-
so happens. Dun,
Let's
dun,
move
dun.
it specifically to when Groth's
Literally, my
child.
son. Yeah,
will
literally,
be
my
born.
son needed born. Yep. So I was stuck.
Thanks,
in Colorado.
Ritter.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ryan.
Yeah. Do you have any idea how many more sets I could have gotten with one more swag mule of Aaron Groth's caliber?
Exactly. You know how many people would have gave me it just because I'm a
I
nice
know.
guy?
Oh,
It was like, here you go.
Yeah.
I like
Oh,
Oh,
it.
congratulations on your kid. Here's some fucking packs.
Exactly. You could have milked the shit out of the fact that you were missing the birth of your son to be at Worlds. Would have been
Absolutely.
perfect.
Melee tables, I'd be
Yeah.
like, hey, you guys know I'm missing my son's birth for this, right? So
Yeah, World Melee Champion Aaron Groth. Congratulations
Yeah,
on the
gonna
birth
keep
of
me.
your son.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that
Can
was
we-
where I was at. So let's talk about my stop talking about my downer. How was your guy?
You're downer. Shit,
man.
dude.
I hope this
No,
goes into
actually, hey,
time
This is-
capsule for the kid.
actually, everything went well, guys. Healthy baby. Couldn't have asked for a better delivery. Especially at Army Hospital. You never know with that place, right? But I mean, everything went great. I'm not sad that I missed Worlds. So,
Yeah, man. Congrats and thank you for committing to the bit.
yep, absolutely, guys. Yeah, I will be your mule for anything. Ask CT. Hey, CT, you need a refill?
Yeah, dog. I need you to bring it out here.
Today you're going to be
Middle of
our
a snow
zero reserve host mule as
Yeah.
you mule the content out to all the listeners.
I will ask the pertinent questions, guys. That's my role here. They will tell you, regale you of all their good stories of making the cut and going to the final table. Alex Black, congrats, by the way.
Spoilers.
Spoiler alert. But
yeah, so I
before
guess
we
we're
get
done
there,
because now everybody knows what happens.
I know, right? But before we get there, how did this start? Alex Black, would you like to tell us about how you got this all going here? You had a great idea that I really wanted to go.
Sure, yeah. So testing houses are really fun. A. B, last official FFG Worlds. And frankly, I don't ever see myself getting deeply into another card game. So it felt like maybe this was the last opportunity to do something like that. The last time we did it was sort of marred by a certain person that we won't be bringing up, drinking way too much. But no, honestly, like it's just they're really fun. If people can set the time aside to do something like this, I highly recommend it. And I just threw it out there. I was like, hey, let's like, how many of us are available to meet up the week before and just do some hardcore testing? Just kind of like lock ourselves into the Minnesota winter and see what comes out on the other side. And I also really wanted an opportunity to try and prepare for a big event like this with Alejandro. We've worked together, whether it would be on the Wars to Come or for, on Team USA for the World Cup. And so I just, I kind of went to CT and Jess and everybody else on our build group and just said, hey, would it be okay if we brought Alejandro along?
I was against it from the start.
From the very beginning. CT and Alejandro, they don't really dislike each other.
Yeah. They'll put them in the same room. Yeah.
Mongooses are very dangerous.
Yeah. I heard CT had to shout through the bathroom on his moves against Alejandro because Alejandro wouldn't allow him at the table. Is that true, Alejandro?
Yeah, they basically played their games with a door dividing the two of them.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, lucky for us, Alejandro's room at the Airbnb actually locked from the outside. So we managed to maneuver Alejandro into his bedroom and then lock him in here for hours. But perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's not untrue. Yeah.
It's not. It isn't. That isn't untrue. That is a true fact. That is a factual. That is an actual factual fact.
It's like, oh, CT's gonna take a shower. He's like, do you need to get out of here before I take a shower? I was like, no, you're fine. You're fine. When is CT gonna start this shower? It's been like 30 minutes. I haven't heard shit.
I mean, thankfully,
there's no shower going. The door's still locked.
Thankfully, Alejandro's bedroom was a whole ass apartment, so he would have been fine.
Yeah, he was fine. He was fine. It was fine.
It was all fine here.
No, but
how are you?
Yeah, so we asked around, and obviously it's a big ask for people to take a whole week off of work for a card game tournament. So unsurprisingly, there weren't a lot of people who were able to. But CT, Jess, myself, Kevin Austin, who are all part of our build group and have been for a long time, we're all available too. And we just figured we could, we knew we wanted to add Alejandro, and we figured we really would like to get an even number. That way we could have, as many games going as possible. And I think CT was the one who suggested we asked Tom McKenzie if he wanted to come, and Tom was more than willing. And so he was a welcome addition to the group. That's kind of how it got organized.
It's just too bad we had to scrape the bottom of the barrel just to get Tom McKenzie.
I don't know what you're talking about.
At least he'll play some games.
Did he have pants? Did he wear pants?
He didn't wear pants one goddamn time.
Yeah.
He didn't even not wear pants.
No coat.
Didn't even wear a coat. Yeah. True vampire.
There was literally people outside the Applebee's or wherever it was that we ate one night that like me and Tom McKenzie are both walking with
the Chili's.
It was Chili's. Yeah. We both are wearing shorts, but like I've got my like jacket on, and some guy's just like, look at that fucking idiot. He's not wearing pants. And Tom McKenzie just like looks at me, also just wearing shorts, but like I got a jacket on, so I'm immune to the cries of the hecklers. And they're just like railing fucking Tom about not having his shorts on because he doesn't have a coat on. It was the weirdest like psychological experiment imaginable.
Is anybody going to tell TT that they were also making fun of him?
No.
They
specifically said, "Look at that dumb fuck Tom McKenzie and his dumb fuck no pants looking face. Look at him."
I'm sure there was a "you big dumb bastard" with CT right there too.
Oh yeah, turned right to Tom McKenzie. Well, I got a good dumb bastard in on the weekend. It was not that night.
So I think everybody got in on Saturday. Various times, a few of us flying in. CT, Jess, and Tom drove in. And there was a whole debacle with the rental car that we don't really need to go into. But basically, once we were all settled in Saturday night, we decided, right away, we sort of, before, I guess, to go back a little bit to the previous week, Alejandro and I got on Skype, or whatever it was, Facebook chat. I don't remember what it was. But and we had a pretty extensive conversation just trying to establish like what we thought the meta looked like, what we thought the pillars of the format were. And then we went through and sort of refined and trimmed the fat on sort of meta established decks so that we'd have a gauntlet going into this testing session. So we know, if we're brewing something that we need it to be able to have decent matchups against at least a portion of this field. Otherwise it's really not worth spending a whole lot of time on. So, right away, Saturday night, we just started crushing games. I guess I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to the experience, to the in-house testing experience, but there's definitely a lot more there.
Well, I'm sure you guys being on, you said on the World's team, the World Cup team or whatever, I'm sure a lot of this was hashed out previous, right?
We definitely took a lot of lists like for the Gauntlet from World's list, but that's not really where this came about. I mean, that we had worked together on that definitely influenced it, but there wasn't a lot of like a ton of overlap, I don't think.
Okay.
No. I mean, it was just, I think, we've all worked together, not necessarily as a team, but as a podcasting group for a while. So there was kind of this sense of, it'd be really nice to build with each other, one time before potentially the last tournament. But, more on that, obviously, definitely not going to be the last tournament. I think that was one of the big positive takeaways from the weekend for a lot of people, including myself, who went in not really knowing if this would be their last tournament or not. But that was kind of the impetus for at least me reaching out to Alejandro and being like, hey, let's do this together because we may not get another opportunity. And the rest kind of just like, I don't know, it kind of fell into place. It was like we got an Airbnb pretty late in the game. But thankfully middle of winter in Minnesota, things were not very expensive or hard to find. Yeah, I mean, as far as the process, we identified pretty quickly that there were really two mainstay format decks that we wanted to focus on, and that was Targaryen Blood and Laney Shadows. They just seemed like they had the most powerful things going on, and they had the smallest holes in the metagame. So, and one of the ways that we tried to sort of visualize this was we actually ended up buying a whiteboard and sort of using that to track like game data, and that I think helped give people a good visualization of what decks were performing well, like where they weren't performing well. I don't know. What did you guys think of the whiteboard?
Yeah, the whiteboard worked out really well. It was funny, we noted after a few days, like there were some decks that when you take the data that's on the whiteboard didn't look like, I mean, they look good, but they weren't stars like we thought they were. And then you kind of think about it and we're like, well, we deleted like 8 decks from this board because they just absolutely got destroyed by either Targaryen Blood or Laney Shadows.
Right.
and so that was good to be able to eliminate decks just based on that.
So you guys started with those two on the top, and then filled in from there.
I mean, I guess we can get
Cohort might have
detailed.
been-
We can
Yeah,
get
let's-
nitty gritty. I mean, we started.
Yeah. Well, I think people are going to
gaunt-
want to know your guys' thought process in this, because
sure.
I know a
Yeah.
lot of, not so much competitive, but people who might want to be competitive or middle ground, they like to hear this stuff. So,
Yeah, so we figured the meta had, I think, 6 pillars. Maybe it was only 5, but Targ Sea of Blood, Baratheon Cohort, Lanny Shadows, and then
Night's Watch, Valyrian Steel, and Stark Crossing, I think, were the other two that we kind of had.
And then we had some like maybe Targ Valyrian Steel, but definitely less of a pillar. So those 5 were sort of like the pillars that we wanted to compare anything that we were building up against that. So basically we set aside the first 2 full days of testing, Sunday and Monday, to experiment. Obviously, 5 or 6 days or whatever it was isn't a really large amount of time usually, but when you're hyper dedicated to testing, like basically like the entire day, it does end up being quite a bit of time. And we explored lots of different decks. We played, Baratheon, Hollow Hill, the Hano list. We played some Conclave decks. We played
Greyjoy.
We played Free Folk. We played a few different Stark variants. And eventually, the closest we came to playing an off-meta deck, I guess you could say, would be Night's Watch Kraken. The first 5 games we played against Targ Sea of Blood, it won. And the first 5 or 6 games it played against Barra Cohort. Or no, was it Lanny Shadows? It was Lanny Shadows.
No, it was Barra Cohort.
It was Barra Cohort. Against Barra Cohort, it also won all but 1 game. So it started 9-1 in our testing. We thought, okay, maybe we have a real thing here. But it immediately was revealed to have a pretty poor matchup against Stark Crossing. The existence of things like Passing the Black Gate were just really hard to overcome. It also really struggled against the decks that have an agenda that literally says make 3 gold every turn in the Valyrian Steel decks. We were unsure how much of the meta would be Valyrian Steel. It turned out to not be that prevalent, but it was definitely a concern to have a bad matchup in those, and then also the Lanny Shadows against Lanny Shadows. So not saying we had the perfect list, but we had an exciting variant that we tried for a while, and ultimately it had too many holes for us to devote an extended amount of time to it. So I would say I think we went to bed Sunday night excited about Night's Watch Kraken, and by lunchtime on Monday we all knew the deck was dead for us. So
yeah, it kind of fell flat pretty quickly. But there was some really exciting times. What was it, Sunday night, that we're like, whoa, did we do it? Is this
right?
Is this happening?
Yeah, 43 dudes on a mat. We just we couldn't figure out why we had 43 characters in this deck, but it just felt right.
Felt so good.
Felt really good.
I know most of my games that I got in with the Night's Watch Kraken was middle of the night with Tom McKenzie, and he'd just be throwing the Stark decks at it, and it'd just be 11 dudes on his side of the board, and then there'd be 18 guys on my side of the board, and nobody can reset. And it's just cool, all my 1 strength Night's Watch guys are keeping this Stark deck at bay from winning challenges.
That was an interesting dynamic we didn't touch on. So we all sort of came together, and with wildly different sleep schedules. I mean, CT is working nights right now. A few of us are working early days. A couple of us, I think, work later in the day. And then not to mention 3 different, or at least 2 different, if not 3 different time zones, sort of all coming together. So there was a huge element of we would go to sleep. Kevin and I and Jess and eventually Alejandro would go to sleep, having given CT and Tom the most recent update of whatever deck we were working on. And then in the morning we would wake up sort of excitedly to try to figure out what was figured out overnight. Sometimes
shift change.
Sometimes the news wasn't great, but But I mean, it was really interesting, sort of as we all sort of adjusted to the same schedule by the end of the week. So yeah, I mean, I think like obviously a lot of sort of focus testing was one big reason to do what we did, but there was a huge amount of camaraderie too that you really can't get anywhere else, or it's hard to get from doing it any other way.
Yeah,
So
there's the intangibles right there you can't explain unless you're there experiencing it. So, was your guys' goal with this testing eventually to get to that one deck? How should you go about this type of testing in your
sure,
experience,
yeah.
Dave?
I mean, really, this was one of the places where, and if anybody else feels strongly about this question, feel free to stop me. But
Stop.
where the all right, done.
Just kidding. Keep going.
Okay. This is one of the things. This is one of the places where the whiteboard actually really helped us, because it just like kind of let us see like, okay, we haven't played enough games in this matchup to really feel good about whether or not this is a good matchup for this deck or not. So we wanted to sort of like put our flag on every matchup of the main pillars. So once we had aggregated enough data, then we could stand back and sort of look at it and say, well, like Targ Sea Blood has won 11 of 17 games against Barracohor, and it's won like 9 straight games against Stark Crossing, and it's won 5 out of 7 games against Stark Fealty, and it's won 9 out of 8 games against Night's Watch Valyrian Steel, and it's won 10 out of 13 against Targ Valyrian Steel.
Did you just say it won 9 out of 8 games against Valyrian?
Sorry, 9 out of 10.
Damn, this deck is good.
And then it's also, and then it's bad matchup, Laney Shadows. It's won 9 out of 23 games or whatever it ended up being. So, so it kind of let us know like, well, this deck seems like it really only has one weakness of the main decks, and that kind of guided us to be, in a position where, well, we should focus on this deck. Laney Shadows. What's that?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that Laney Shadows was, like I said, the other deck that we were focusing on. Mm-hmm. But there's an interesting wrinkle there in that I think the Laney Shadows deck, there are like quite a few more moving parts, and as it became later in the week happened, it just seemed like we didn't have enough time for everyone to become super comfortable with Laney Shadows. So, I mean, yes, the goal was for us as a group to come to a consensus, like this is the correct deck that we should play. But I mean, it was by no means like play the deck or go out into the snow and die. Like Alejandro said, Tom was very much leaning Laney Shadows for a good portion of the week.
Yeah, I think you can preface it by saying like we all kind of figured like if we weren't doing the testing house, I think you can say we were each walking into Worlds expecting to play Targ C, other than Tom, who was expecting to play Laney Shadows. So we had a really strong foundation to begin with.
Right. Yeah, I will say that I was definitely split between Barracohor and Targ C. And it wasn't until like I think it was the first day of testing. It was like let's try this matchup. Like
that first day was such a sobering experience for you.
Yeah. I was like, I think my Barracohor deck can actually take this down, and it was not accurate at all. Like,
well, the very first thing we did was we replaced a plot. We replaced maybe First Snow of Winter or Valar Doharis in the Targ C deck with Valar Morghulis.
No, so it was my list. So it never had either one of those. It had a second return of the field and it had a close call.
Okay, so we changed the plot. So one of the very first things we did with the Targ Sea Blood deck was we readjusted the plot line.
Yeah. There were, and it made a huge difference, right? We took out a second return, we took out the close call, we put in a Valar Morghulis, and we put in a March to the Wall.
Yeah, so like we went like kind of old school control plot line, like never been to Worlds and not had both of those plots in my deck, I don't think, to be honest. Like maybe the Hyper Viper year I didn't play March to the Wall, but it's just like, and then we said like, well, what is Barracohor doing turn 1 against us? Like what is the like level 0 play for them? It's opening parlay, right? And so we figured if they don't set up a dupe character, we're just going to open Valar Morghulis on them. And they're going to flip parlay. Maybe they have a Rose Road in play. Maybe they have a Grey Hall. The chances are they're not going to be able to play King down that turn, and that's really going to set them back quite a bit. So, not to mention, like, if you know your opponent's opening parlay, naming military against you in against Targ Seablood, you definitely don't want to be wasting one of your 2 claim plots on that turn. So, we had Valar Morghulis, we had March to the Wall, we had, in weird scenarios, you could play King plot or Return, but you had all these options that were better than just like flipping a Vanquish and hoping that they played something that wasn't parlay.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there was a chat with Alejandro and we were talking about that if anything you were going to counter bar cohort, it was going to be the plot line, right?
Yeah. So that was always my thinking. Like, there were certainly a lot of people that went in playing like 3x in the name of your king and hoping that was enough.
Yep.
Which that was never really my thinking. In the bear cohort list that I was playing, I was opening parlay against Targ Seablood and just kind of pushing them off a turn, establishing board, basically not getting disrupted, right? Which was what the bear cohort deck is. Super fast, but it's incredibly vulnerable to all the different sorts of disruption. And if it falls behind a step, it has a really hard time getting back in the fight. So,
yeah, I guess we didn't say it.
Yeah.
So maybe it needs to be said. We all played Targ Seablood. So all 6 of us played Targ Seablood. There were a couple more that played basically the same deck, if not the same deck, that weren't at the house, but coming out of the house, we were on Targ Seablood. So, and we did put a lot of time into it from day one. I mean, it was just one of those things where, kind of classic, like tournament preparation standpoint. What were the most recent, most broken cards that were printed? How can we exploit them? And Targ had Womb of the World and overwhelming numbers. There were other cards recently, and Raiding Khalasar. So
Fury of the Khalasar.
Or Fury. And there were other cards in other factions printed that are very good, Clytus among them. But the Targ had the biggest concentration of those cards. It even had some really good role players like Horse Lords. Which, while not a huge all-star in the deck, definitely improved like the deck's floor.
And Recaro.
Horse Lords were a massive workhorse.
Absolutely.
But
and Recaro
for me all weekend, actually.
Recaro went from being the likes of a one of with Kaholo and Hago and all these other Blood Riders to being, there were matchups where it was more important for you to have a Recaro than to have a Jogo.
Yeah,
I just kept having games where Recaro was doing so much work, and I'm like, we need 3 of this guy.
Yeah. So there was a lot of tweaking. We went back and forth on a lot of things. We added a Dario and a second Aegon. We cut. There was a Nightmares in the deck originally. It just felt like when we asked the question, like, are you ever triggering Sea of Blood and going and getting your one of Nightmares? And the answer was no. So it really didn't feel right to play Nightmares in the deck at that point. And we were playing 3 attachments originally, and we just found that they were really tertiary, kind of win more.
I was about to ask, did you get rid of the attachments? I think
originally we were playing like 4.
Yeah.
So my list, I think, was originally playing 4. And then we went down to 2, and then we went back up to 3. And then there was a time when we were kind of tuning the deck to get to the last steps, and we were like, you know what? Why don't we really want these second and third copy of Recaro? What can we cut for them? And we're like, these attachments are just kind of extraneous.
Yeah, I mean, we decided that good players would still play around the +3 strength if they were able to. And really, like, if I have gifts for the Widow, like King plot is so good against so many decks that I'm just going to slam that. And there's just really no consideration for the other attachments in a lot of scenarios.
99.99999% of the time, we were just pulling Beggar King as soon as we could get it. and utilize and leverage it.
Yeah, and funnily enough, sometimes you fell into a trap of grabbing a steed to win a challenge, and then it wasn't impactful enough long run, but you're like, shit, I would really like to play this Kinkblad here, but I'm going to turn off all my stuff too.
Yep.
Numbers is doing the work for us that the steed was doing times 10.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Yep. 3 numbers. That was one of those things where I feel like there were other Targ Blood lists that didn't get there, but from a very early standpoint, we were like 3 womb, 3 numbers. These cards are busted.
I never considered any those were in the gauntlet list. They were in my World Cup list. I never considered dropping them. They were so good.
They're too good.
Seeing that deck, it seems like if you were going to take ends of a deck, characters and events being the 2 ends and everything in the middle, it seemed you wanted both ends heavy characters, heavy events. Is what I saw the best Targ Blood decks that I faced, just testing and online. So
one thing that we didn't talk about actually, when we were choosing Valar Morghulis before that, like this was in the before we went, right? Alex and I had that call. We talked about Valar Morghulis, like we really wanted just to clear the board effect. And I'm not sure that at the time we realized just how good it was with Womb of the World.
Right.
Because Womb of the World, you don't have to invest into a body that's going to get reset. So you could pay for, and you get the tempo that it provides on a 2 gold turn, and it's just insanely powerful. So I think outside of having access to Womb of the World, it's a tougher conversation to have with Valar Morghulis. But once you add Womb of the World, it's so good.
Yeah, when you consider that there are Valor turns that sequence themselves in such a way where you're playing a 2-drop, you're wombing into a raiding Khalasar to raise your military claim to 1, and then you're also putting something to the sword on that very turn. You just realize how flexible Valar Morghulis really is. And after, we finally got into the trenches and we're experimenting with these plots, sort of figuring out their role in all these matchups, the Valor started to reveal itself as just a critical part of our game plan. As we had this sort of short list of characters that were kill on sight characters on turn 1, characters like Hizdar in Targ Valyrian Steel, characters like Clytus in Night's Watch Valyrian Steel,
Either king out of Bara.
Yeah, right. Kings out of Bara, sometimes even like
Hob still, right?
Yeah, Three-Finger Hob, Wyman. Basically, we just, because of Womb and Kotho, we just had such a massive tempo advantage on our opponents on the Valor turns that we could take that huge tempo hit and still end up being in an advantageous position on board after the Valor.
So you guys created a target package for your Put the Swords, essentially?
No, it was, well, yes and no. This was the conversation we were having surrounding the turn 1 Valor. Like, what are we doing here?
Yep.
It was also like it's really impactful that that you can open turn 1 Valor. And so when you match up against an opponent who has some of these characters that you might want to snap it off on, you can mulligan the way that you want to, right?
Gotcha.
So it really it was so valuable in so many different aspects.
So Valor was you had a target package for Valor. If you saw these characters turn 1, hey, you can pull the green light.
And there were just matchups where, even on stream, I think I went back and watched the stream games early this week, and there were scenarios where it was like, oh, he mulliganed that hand. That hand was kind of good. The hand was pretty weak to Valor, and I kind of want to be Valoring on turn 1. So like I'm mulliganing into these hands that are like a little better for the Valor, like they have Kotho or they have some locations going on.
Yeah.
I don't want to be Valoring, my Drogo on turn 1.
Yeah. You don't want to characters away.
Exactly. So
and you don't want to waste that 8 gold at the same time too.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So once we kind of settled into the plot line, then, and also to the deck itself, by the second or third day, once we had more or less eliminated all the chaff.
Intermission, 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 intermission. Oh, wow. Fucking goddamn fancy. Fancy.
We're back. And fancier than ever, and you can't even tell. But It's probably less fancy because I don't get the soundboard.
Are we alive?
Yeah, we're live.
No, I mean like alive.
Is this the real life?
Deep question.
Is this just a fantasy?
Fantasy.
Where were we?
We were eliminating decks.
We eliminated them all.
Yeah.
That's true.
In the end.
The end.
In the end, there was only Targ Sea of Bloods left.
That is very accurate.
I can list the decks that we eliminated, like, without even playing other games. Just against Sea of Blood.
Go, Jess.
So Greyjoy reigns. It won 0 of 3 games.
Yep,
so it was eliminated.
That is correct.
Barra 3-2-1. Lost 4 games to Targ Sea of Blood. Free Folk lost 2 games, and then Tyrell Conclave lost 2 games. Those are just like slaughter matches, so
It's actually interesting to point out too that these decks were also teched for the Sea of Blood matchup.
yeah.
Like
Right.
there were decks that we built and thought that we might play or wanted reps against, but they had tech for the matchup, and they still just got rolled over.
Yeah, the Hollow Hill especially. It was like it almost felt like the deck was built for Targ Sea of Blood.
Yeah,
And it still couldn't get there.
What if we do Intrigue and Power first? Oh, you lose. Oh, okay.
And it's like it was just like, well, you know, kind of like on a meme too. And then we were like, well, let's try the free folk as well. And like the free folk just does everything the Targ deck does 1,000 times worse.
Yeah.
So
we're up to 2 minutes, guys.
oh, we haven't been cut off. This is it. I can feel it coming in the air.
This is the
Tonight.
real life.
Hold
Should we move to the tournament, or what do we want to talk about?
Move on. Yeah, we'll move on real quick. So I mean, we talked about decision to even do a test house, the testing process, eventually finding the deck, and then what the deck did. But let's talk about players. So I mean, I've collected throughout probably the 4 or 5 years we've been playing this game, just talking to different people. I mean, a lot of people do it online, easy. Most people don't have a meta. Some people do, weekly meetups. Some people have this testing group, chat wise, and then, others kind of like do it themselves. I remember Giannis telling me he would do right before Stolic, he would play 9 hours or 6 to 8 hours actually straight online to get that feel of a tournament and the fatigue. So Alex, I know you mentioned, later on you guys started feeling some fatigue. How did you guys cope with playing for 5 or 6 days and then running right in the tournament? How did each player take care of that?
I mean, I think that it helped that we took dedicated breaks for like dinners. We definitely tried to enjoy our downtime. We played a couple games of Villainous. One night, I think on the penultimate night, we played The Thing. And so it was just nice to to just have these kind of like breaks in the testing where people can kind of unwind. And we also took time just like not playing, but just talking about where we were at with the decks. Once we were kind of all in on Targ Sea of Blood, we laid the deck out on the table and we talked about literally every slot in the deck. And that's where like sort of the last few innovations came. The decision to play the 3 Recaro, the decision to only play the 1 attachment, and ultimately the decision to play a single Old Billbone. Because after we had decided that we wanted to play Targ Sea of Blood, we put a lot of focus on the Sea of Blood mirror.
Another little thing we did is we went back and forth about the 1 Blood of My Blood for forever because we kept wanting to cut it, but it's the 1 card that Lanny Shadows just couldn't touch.
Right.
So we just ended up like keeping it in. That was a fun.
Yeah. We did come full circle on the Ago as well. We cut it very early for the Dario, and then eventually came back around saying it was nice to just have another intrigue icon we could go get with Blood of My Blood if Kotha was already in play or dead.
Who also had the Sand Tech in the match we were the most worried about.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But we did spend most of
the Sir Gregor Clegane or fucking Robert Strong is a card.
Yeah, that card is real.
A card that was giving us nightmares.
We focused a lot on the mirror match in the last day or two. We probably oversimplified the mirror somewhat, as I think my mirror games evidenced in the actual tournament. I still feel strongly that the King's Road is an indicator of advantage in the matchup, but it's not such a deciding factor. And so we sort of figured out what we wanted to try to do in the mirror, but we probably could have done some more. And we'll get into sort of our mirror game, the games we played in the mirror here in a bit, I suppose. But
yeah, definitely we'll talk about. I mean, I'll give the point of view from the chat too as well, like what people thought. Definitely play differently, but yeah, I mean, Alejandro, CT, Jess. I mean, as players, what'd you guys do? A lot of people worry about sleep, worry about drinking, water, eating. Like, how do you deal with the fatigue? Like,
so here's what I'll say about the testing house. The testing house was a godsend for me.
Yeah.
So traditionally, people know that like, I try and play like hours and hours a day, and like going into like the holidays this past year, because honestly I can say that from like the beginning of November up until the testing week is the least amount of Thrones that I've played in the last 5 years. I was not able to get games in, like life was just too fucking crazy. So I came into the testing house hungry for games, no fatigue. Like, I was just happy to get games in and to get a lot of games in with a lot of different decks. Because I'd never felt so out of touch, I would say, with the meta than I did then. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but, like, I needed the games, and I needed the reps, and I needed to shake the rust off real bad.
Yeah.
So, that was infinitely helpful, regardless of, like, the data itself. Just psychologically, it was good to get into that like positive mindset with all the stuff we were doing and to just grind the games.
Yeah.
And
So
I'll say that like we had a table that held 6, but we only ever had 2 games going at a time. So the other 2 people could like watch or like, do some like 2-on-1 games and just like chill out in general.
Yeah, it ended up working.
Right,
really
yeah.
well.
I mean, people could step away from the table if they needed to. That wasn't like a mandatory that everyone be there at all times. It was kind of like it'd be nice to have 2 games going at all times where like where we aren't like taking the time off for food or for like another game like a board game or something like that. So
yeah. Speaking of fatigue too, it actually helped that we chose the deck we did too, because it's not a super grindy match, a super grindy deck, right? But it has like the best top end in the game. Like, it just felt like the best deck in the format, and it wasn't super slow. So it helps.
I mean, you hit it on the nail on the head though. Like, we talk about this all the time. The past 4 or 5 years, the winning decks have been that, right, Alejandro? Like, it's not the most complicated, not the most pressure. I mean, Giannis is the one year I was at Stolic. I mean, that was pretty cool of him to do that. But like I said, he played 8 or 9 hours a night. He changed his whole sleep cycle to do that. So I don't know if people are that dedicated. So typically, when you're going to battle fatigue, you're just going to take it easier, like you said, a wider top end deck, right?
I don't want to overemphasize the simplicity of the deck. I think that the deck is complex, and I think I could have played a lot better than I did if I had more time. But one of the things it does do that other decks don't is that it will just sometimes end the game on turn 1 or turn 2. And then that's when the autopilot becomes much more useful to finish the game out. Whereas there are just a slew of decks, Valyrian Steel, the Shadows decks, where you have to be playing your best game at all times in order to win. Whereas the Targ Sea Blood, you may blow someone out on turn 1 or turn 2, and you really just have to walk through the motions to finish the game out. And that saved us a lot of mental energy in the testing process as well as at the tournament.
Yep.
Yeah,
As much as I love grindy decks, they don't get nearly as many free wins as like the top aggro decks usually get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with
because
Alex,
there's the
too.
difference between playing. Yeah, there's a difference between playing the game with the thought process. Like you said, the deck itself is not simple; it's complex. But once you get to that autopilot of just running the mechanics of the game, that's where you want to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Alex too.
Sure.
Kind of where it's like
kind of gets this bad rep of being no scale when I don't think that that's true, and it definitely feels like some of the decisions that I was making in the type game has mattered. So
yeah, but
especially
like,
in the circumstances where
you want that intrigue.
Especially in the circumstances where when you're not when you aren't sequencing things correctly, or you're walking into the answers that other people have against you.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's unfair to cast this light like, the deck doesn't reward skill. I mean, all decks reward skill, but you will have the nut draw sometimes where it really, you can make mistakes and there's more of a cushion because the deck is just so inherently powerful.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. I mean, you want to bring a deck like that because it will make up for some of your mistakes sometimes. So I don't think it's something where it's like, it's not a quality of a deck that I want to shy away from inherently. Because it allows for you to make mistakes and still do well. Because it just has these really explosive draws where games are over very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that took me a while as a new player to learn, to understand and let my ego go to play these decks. Because you guys are all right. There's not a deck out there that's just, slam bam, I win type of thing. You still got to play out the sequences, but it's better once you get to that point where like, okay, I'm getting free power here. I'm getting unopposed, things like that you can.
Yeah, there's a reason why we see a lot of the same names at the top tables time and time again. Like these players are just, they're outplaying other players, you know? So, was it the most innovative deck we could have brought to the tournament? Absolutely wasn't, but that wasn't the goal. That was not the goal of the testing house.
Yep.
The goal was to take what we considered to be the best deck in the format, build the best version of it we could, and try to win a world championship.
Yeah, if we were just playing the coolest deck that we could come up with, I would have played that Martell Lion deck that had like 16 characters in it. But that's not the best deck.
And I also want to caveat and say that like we by no means explored every corner of the meta. There were a handful of decks at the tournament that I was very impressed by. And that were not areas we really explored. For instance, we didn't put a lot of time into Conclave beyond looking at a Lanny Conclave list and exploring a Tyrell Conclave list. And, while Wasam maybe didn't do great as a unit, Sam executed his deck's game plan pretty well. And it had a very clearly it had a clear strategy in certain matchups that was very powerful. And it was not something that I had considered. Not to mention the SoCal deck, not all of them played it, but the Night's Watch Dragon deck as well, I felt like had a clear game plan and executed it pretty well.
Yeah,
I'm sure there are more decks out there that I'm not thinking of.
The DC Lanny Shadows deck was super against the status quo of what Lanny Shadows decks have been recently as well.
Yeah.
Right. And this is kind of the nature...
Swanson's, he put the ash mark. I mean...
Yeah, Swanson's...
Right.
Yeah. He was
this is kind of the nature of the testing house, and one of the downsides is that within a few days, your testing is going to become fairly inbred.
Yep.
And so you're going to be blind to certain changes. Like, we certainly played Lanny Shadows, but we didn't iterate very much on the deck. So all of our testing was done against kind of this very specific, like, meta Lanny Shadows variant, where, like you guys said, when it came down to it, sure, there were people playing the meta variant, you know, the Joe Zimmers of the world, but there was also a large contingent of successful players playing a different restricted list card, playing a handful of Shadows cards that really weren't meta relevant beforehand, like Sure Diplomat, and, you know, or playing in a location like Ashmark that, I mean, never even entered my mind. So that's kind of one of the downsides of the testing house process, is that if you're not receiving sort of stimulus from outside during the process, like, you can be left a little surprised when you see some of the innovations coming from people who chose a different deck to iterate on than the one that you chose.
Can it be a successful testing house if you try to basically comb the whole world, so to speak? Can you really do that with the meta?
I don't think so. I think that, you know, honestly, I felt like we were fortunate in that the meta, in one way, we were fortunate because the meta was fairly, quote unquote, solved, which I don't necessarily think is true, but in the sense of the words, you know, there were these known quantities, and so we were advantaged. Everyone was advantaged by sort of starting off from that position, you know. But no, I mean, like, obviously with more people and more time, we could have done more, but you never really are going to figure everything out. And this is kind of something you have to acknowledge before, you know, during the process.
Yeah, that's what I figured, is you're not gonna, it's not smart to try to conquer the whole meta, if you will. But so I think that wraps up testing. Anyone else want to add anything on that?
It was a good time. It was amazing.
I think we can move on
Thank you, Alex,
to
Black, for cooking all our meals.
11 out of 10 would do again.
Yep.
Good. Let's move on to the meat and potatoes. Who wants to start off their day one? Was it day 1A and day 1B? Who was day 1A?
Yeah, Jess and CT played day 1A, so maybe they should start.
Yep. Start with you guys.
So there was not nearly as much Sea of Blood day 1 on the Targ end of things.
It was Shadows,
It was
right?
very
Shadows
It
heavy?
was Stark like crossing.
It was
No.
no.
Yeah, there was a lot
If
of
you
Stark
look at
crossing.
if you look at the pie, it was actually like surprisingly balanced as far as
I guess
representation.
Before we get too deep into your day, I do want to mention that the night before we submitted deck lists, we sat down and had a discussion about a meta breakdown, and we actually went through, particularly because they had released the names of people that would be playing on 1A and 1B, and we tried to figure out sort of what we thought everyone was likely to play, and then based on that, and sort of based on just like general assumptions about the meta, what percentage of the field we thought each of the pillars of the format would make up. And I don't have that data in front of me because Kevin has that in his notebook, and he's not on this podcast. But I would venture to bet we were pretty close, ultimately, all things considered.
I think we definitely
we were very close.
So. But go ahead, CT. Yeah.
I was just saying, like, it's good you brought that up because actually I think that was like super fun and very informative. So, I mean, I dodged mirrors on day 1.
I did not.
Jess did not. It was. I guess I'll just kind of like run through my matches like super fast. I played against Josh first round, who was playing Free Folk. So that was kind of I think that's super favored for us because, like we talked about in the testing house, like we just do what Free Folk does better.
Can you provide us with the last name?
Smentek.
Okay, sorry.
Smentek was his name. Yeah.
If you know the last name, no worries. If not.
Yeah, that's correct.
I'll try.
Yes,
but yeah,
correct.
I mean, we just Free Folked We just out free folk the free folk. Game 2, I played Rich Walker. He was playing Barrow Rose. His deck was cool. It was definitely trying to stall the aggro decks. Definitely, like, there was a King plot turn with a Salice, which was cool. Because, like, you just couldn't do anything. Like, he tried to stall it off. It was playing in the name of your king and stuff like that, but it kind of just, you know, if the deck, without getting our boards reset, we just, you know, just kind of keep piling it on until the inevitable occurs. And that's kind of what happened. My third game was not technically a mirror. It was Targ Wars. It was Jacob. He had a really interesting open. He tried to winter die me right away because his hand was just full of Kothoma Sande Burn. And I opened, pretty sure I opened King Plot that game, and he kind of set himself up for the Valor, which goes to say I was pretty impressed. I think we got pretty deep into day one without it being super common knowledge that we were on Valor. Because people just, it didn't seem like people were playing like we had it.
I mean, it didn't even extend into day 2, frankly, because I mean, what was the last tournament that you and I, like, major tournament that where we were both in attendance, where we weren't playing the exact same 67 cards, and like I was still blowing people out with Valor.
Yeah, somehow, yeah, I think it was, which was pretty surprising between us all being on it and Francis being on it as well. But or maybe people were just trying to, maybe people did know we were on it and they were just trying to kind of like get us earlier than they maybe should have been. I don't know. I don't know what the thought process was, but it was pretty ballsy. That was just like not a great game for him. Fourth game, I played against Jim. He was playing his Lanny Conclave deck, and he did know we were on the Valor because he kept a very wacky opening hand that just let him like triple dupe up his Maesters and get a Brothel Madam in play right away to try and stop him from doing militaries. So that game was a little bit grindy, but I'm trying to remember exactly how I pulled that one out too.
Basically, if I recall, he ended up having to Valor, or you like double Valor ended up happening sometime in the game, whether like it was like subsequent turns or whatever. And I recall him just not having any gas after the second Valor.
Yes, that's right. He had to kill his own Madam on his Valor, but he got to keep a few guys. I think I got to keep a Jogo on my Re-Valor, and obviously Womb did a shit ton of work there. So, like, he could stop me from doing military challenges, but I don't think he had barring or anything. Maybe he had one. But I definitely remember being able to trigger lots of Wombs, jumping in cards. Got me pretty far there. Round 5, I played Jaron Wagner, and he was playing the very low to the ground Start Crossing build that I think him, Derek, Daryl were all playing.
Yeah,
some kind of slight variations of. Yeah, like the only 6-cost character in their deck was Wyman, I think, and everybody else was 4 or below. It was a very swarmy deck. Jaron and I went like 4 or 5 plots. I literally 3 claimed him like 5 straight plots, and he never had less than like 3 characters on the board until the last plot. And he got up to like 12 or 13. I had to do 1 plot where I just had to full defend every one of his challenges, so I didn't get ahead anywhere. But like eventually, slowly, I 2 and 3 claimed him down and got that game, but that was a very close game. And then last round was me and Wama, and we played 8 plots, and it was super back and forth, and it was probably the best game I played all weekend. But he did squeak it out on me with a wall trigger. He got one wall trigger in the game.
You can watch it on the White Walkers channel whenever it comes out.
Yes, actually, you can watch my game with Wama, Jaren, and Jacob on White Walkers. All 3 of those games were recorded, so
Damn.
I'm actually pretty stoked to go back and watch all those games. They're pretty interesting. So that was my day. Jess?
Moving on, Jess.
So my day, of course, I go to Worlds and I have to play Matt Clements from Chicago. Um, I love it whenever I go to Worlds and then I just play people I know. It's cool. So Matt was on a Targ HRD Dragon Pit burn deck. He couldn't really keep a board out against me. He did Valor me. And then, or no, he blooded the, what did he do? Blood of the Dragon me, I think. Got my board kind of down, but he had played Burn Danny and some other guys, and I just Valored his board, kind of just blew him out with that. He was really not expecting it.
Nice.
Doing work.
Yeah. I was just kind of I was trying to hold it off because I saw people like coming around our table a lot. I didn't necessarily want them to know we were on Valor, but I guess they weren't paying that much attention. They didn't
Nobody
know you
cares.
guys were.
Nobody cares about us.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just one of us is playing Valor, that's all. So then second round, I played Brennan Higgins, and it was a mirror match. And he opened sneak attack on me. And I was not expecting that.
Womp, womp, womp.
And kind of
of all the Brownings possible.
Yeah. And like in the testing house, like I had played a bunch of mirrors with Kevin and Tom, and like every time it was just whoever went first just pretty much blew out the other person. So he went first and just blew me out.
Yeah.
It
doesn't help too when you're not expecting to just auto lose the initiative on round one. Like in games where you know it's possible and you set up in a particular way, it's totally different than like putting a bunch of dudes into play and then getting them all claimed down, obviously.
Yeah.
So.
And he had a duped Jogo, because I was planning to either if I had a King's Road, I could try to get that initiative first, or I could just Valor his board. But he had duped Jogo, and then he played trip duped Drogo the second turn, and I was like, oh, and I'm dead.
Yeah.
So
sounds like it.
Yeah.
Then I played Alex O'Shea with his Lanny White book deck. Very interesting. He just couldn't keep a board out against the Sea of Blood, so. I then played Bear Conclave, the deck that's made to beat Sea of Blood, and it definitely beat me. The parlay and the two Palace of Sorrows was real feel bad.
Yeah.
Palace of Sorrows is nuts.
Yeah, it's insane. It's real good. And then I was originally paired to play against Greyjoy Winter, and I was like, oh, I got this. And then I got repaired to Tyrell Shadows with Chris Eggert, who's also from Chicago. And he did shadow things, Knight of Flowers, got all the power.
It's pretty sweet that Jess and I went to Worlds so that we could just play half of our games against people from Chicago.
Yeah. Legit.
As per usual.
Well, they should have brought less people to Worlds. Clearly, they didn't consider you guys.
Yeah, I know. Greater Thompson meta. Stay at home.
Yeah, seriously. And then my last game was another Targ Sea of Blood. So this one, he got the King's Road, so he went first, and he kind of just like wrecked me. I just played Chuds, and I kind of slow played the game. He wasted all of his 2 claim plots, but like I had no power to steal, so he wasn't really getting up in power. And then he had like Drogo and a bunch of dudes out, and he win or died. And then after his win or die, after his win or die, I Valored him. And then I was able to come back from there.
Yeah, swing it back around.
Yeah.
Nice. Well,
Right on.
Two different stories right there with Sea of Blood. Jess, CT, any last words for day one?
Maybe next time. But I'm.
All right. What about?
Damn, I missed that soundboard already.
Me too, man. Me too.
Well, I enjoyed the day one commentary from Alejandro. That was good. Yeah, really enjoyable there. Enjoyed definitely watching people win on stream. especially CT. No, actually, I got to see you in the cut.
We didn't
Never
put
mind.
CT on
So
stream
day 1B.
Yeah,
I got to see.
it's really weird. Alejandro was on commentary day 1, and he got to pick a lot of the matches I think that were on camera. And for some reason, I just kept getting put at the top table for the Walker stream, but not on the live stream. It was weird.
You shut your goddamn mouth.
It's so fucking weird.
It's so weird.
I was just like, well, okay, here.
It's just a
It's so
coincidence,
weird.
okay?
It's so weird how Alejandro didn't want to just show the whole world the deck he was about to play.
Yeah.
And here's where I would do this if I was playing this.
It all worked out though. I'm
weird.
actually
Weird.
I'm super happy that me and AJ's game is the game that ended up being on stream because the game was just so much fun.
Yeah.
Like
It's very enjoyable.
it all
to
worked
watch.
out in the end.
Yeah, very
Alex, you or
enjoyable.
me?
Yeah.
We're not
It
there
was-
yet. Spoilers.
Oh, rip.
Day 1B, guys. Here we go.
I can go because my day 1B. You had a better
Okay.
day one than I did. So,
Spoilers,
honestly,
Rip.
I'm spoilers. Sorry, I'm gonna have difficulty remembering the entirety of the day, but
Start with James
my
Speck.
first round.
I
My
got
first
it.
round was on stream.
Yeah.
I opened Valor. Spec definitely wasn't expecting it, and the game. I don't want to say it went completely downhill from there because there was a critical turn where I played Winter Die, and I drew exactly Recaro, Jogo, Kings Road, overwhelming numbers, and had just enough gold to play out everything.
Dang.
Oh my gosh.
So
And
the moment that you sold Satan your body, do you remember the feeling of like the soul leaving your being?
Yeah. No, look, to say that the run good was anything but there this weekend for me would be a massive understatement. So, even with the Valor spec, still was able to claw back into that game. That's just Targ for you. I mean, they just have these really tempo positive cards. But yeah, after the Winter Die turn, things kind of turned around for me. So won that game. Then I beat a Greyjoy deck. Then I played Andres in round 3. He was playing Barakohor. And with Alejandro watching my game, I punted it away. So sometimes it's correct. Sometimes it's correct to block
when you're
or
dead
to
on board, it's
defend.
probably
Excuse
correct
me.
to block.
Just
Mhm.
it's probably correct to not lose on board. So I did do that. And then round 4.
Kyle.
Round 4 was Kyle Vansel, Laney Shadows.
Yep.
I remember king plotting him early, and just sort of started the train of blowing his locations up and attacking his hand with Recaro and intrigue challenges. And he got really far behind and just kind of never stabilized. And then the next round, I got paired up against Tom McKenzie. This was also a repair story.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, well, this is unfortunate. We're both on 1 loss, so we're not eliminating one of us, but we're making it possible that one of us might not make day 2. Then I got repaired. Still the Targ C mirror. Ended up beating Bohan in that, and then that was round 4.
5.
That was round 5. So then the last round I played against Johnny Wright, walked right into a Watchers on the Wall. We were both already clinched for day 2, so feeling pretty loosey goosey. And I think Johnny's deck is pretty heavily teched for the matchup. And not to spoil too much, but Johnny knew every plot in my plot line. And it definitely helped. It definitely helped him in that game. So I ended up 4-2 on day 1. Felt fine about it. Still within grasp of making my goals a reality. But yeah, that was my day 1. So go ahead and take it away, Alejandro.
Spoilers. Number 24. You were 23. Number 24 was Francis. So going 4-2 is not bad, apparently.
Exactly. Sometimes it pays.
Sometimes it pays. Let's go to the top. Number 1,
so
Alejandro.
I got paired up against Jeffrey Sweeney, who I've never met, but I think I recognize his name from Facebook, and he didn't show up. I don't know if he was around for the check-in. I doubt it, but they somehow missed him at check-in, so I essentially got a bye round 1. Yeah, which was good.
Oh, nice.
So,
Feeling
can
good.
you feel the moment your soul leaves your body and goes exchanges
long
into
time
the
ago.
hands of Satan
That was
himself?
This is becoming a theme.
Oh God.
Tips to being king of Swiss: don't have an opponent.
We are all Satan's children.
Yeah, round 2, I got paired up against Adrian Payette
Nice.
from Chicago, who was playing Bara Kohor. We talked a lot about the open Valor, but she set up like I think it was a duped 4-drop and a 2-drop. She set up a little bit awkward. My setup was a little bit awkward for an open Valor, but she set up a King's Road. I just anticipated that she was going to open parlay, so I opened King Plot so that she couldn't pop the King's Road into a king, and essentially from there, like turn 2, I got to put the pressure on, and just was able to clear her board, and she just couldn't recover after that. So felt good. I played against Hano, sitting right next to Alex, who was playing against Andras, playing Bara Kohor. And Hano set up like a 4-drop, 2-drop, 1-drop, 1-cost attachment. And I'm like, okay, this looks like a good Valor open. I set up a 4-drop, a 3-drop, and a Plaza of Pride, but I'm like, whatever. It doesn't matter. I look over and Andras set up like a duped Bob against Alex, which I was very happy to be sitting in my seat when that happened. Yeah,
duped Bob Shireen, I believe. Unfortunately, we were not able to do synchronized Valar Morghulis's, which I was very much looking forward to beforehand.
So I opened Valor, he opened Parlay. He played a Red Priest and a Warhammer, and then turn 2, I played Vanquish. He played Loan from the Iron Bank, and he played like a Mel and like 3 different attachments. And then I was just with a womb trigger, I was able, maybe it wasn't the womb trigger, I don't remember what exactly it was, but I was able to clear his board. I had just enough. I had 8 strength to his 8 strength, and then he just picked up the cards after I cleared his board, and he wasn't going to have any cards in play after that. So that was good. Johnny Wright, I played against on stream. Spoiler alert, he did not know that I was playing Valor, so he
Damn boy.
So he opens Loan from the Iron Bank, and he has a really good turn. He plays a Mercenary Contract on my 3-drop. He Yorns my 2-drop. He steals my 3-drop, and I made him first. I opened Vanquish, and he was surprised that I made him first, but I did not want to walk into the Yorn with my Jogo that I was anticipating playing and the dupe that I was anticipating playing on the Jogo. But once I saw his turn, that was insane. Like, well, I'm going to play this Womb because this is the only thing that's going to survive from this turn 2 Valor. I didn't know it at the time, but he was playing 2 Return of the Fields. And he just didn't anticipate it, right? Like, he's played a lot of Thrones. He's probably played a lot of test games against Targaryen Blood, and they just don't play Valor outside of us. So I played Valor turn 2. He played At the Gates, and he drew 2 dead dupes of Yorn in the next 2 turns. So
womp, womp.
that kind of was the story of that game.
Damn.
Yeah.
We didn't touch on this in the preparation process, but I think something that actually ended up working in our favor was that the presence of Return to the Field in the meta for so long has actually pushed Valor out of people's minds.
It did.
Because so a lot of people just were not expecting the Valor.
Yeah.
And I know we keep rehashing that, but it actually ended up being like one of the major sort of
that's a great point.
Takeaways for me from the whole.
Well, yeah, it sounds like it helped with the Bar Q matchup for
we definitely wanted for the Bara Kohor matchup, but that's a really good point because in a lot of decks I had to stop playing Valor because it's so hard to run into Return of the Fields when you're playing Valor, and they just pick up all their unduped cards and they put them in the discard pile and they gain a bunch of resources. How do I can't do this again, so I hope you drew air.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of like found that out with the Stark a long time ago, right? Like when Stark was high, like if you Valor in a Return to the Fields, that game's over, right?
It's
lost.
really hard. There is an element that you clear the board, right? So as long as there's no dupes, you might still be in it. But if they have dupes and they played Return on your Valor, it's just
Yeah, I feel like they just reflood, and it's like, all right, I'm going wide now.
Especially in these like
absolutely,
quote unquote fair decks who like pay gold for characters.
Yeah,
Like,
if they have to play a turn with actually just having 2 gold,
I mean,
and they don't get to cheat everything in, then that's a really tough time.
Tough time.
Yeah, I kept thinking back, like when we were in the testing house, I kept thinking back to like the only deck I was running Valor in during the World Cup months was the Lanny Shadows that we were playing, and I found myself Valoring turn 2 so many games and just walking into return, but knowing that like if I don't Valor here and they lock my Valor on a return later, like it's useless.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of like where Valor was, and like only really having a presence in Shadows decks, that definitely was a huge advantage, knowing that people were kind of over it at that point.
Playing a turn earlier.
Turn 1.
Yeah, so
but yeah, Valor's been in a really bad place for a long time, so
yeah, I mean,
people were definitely reading into that.
It's a great point. I mean, I've definitely fell in that rut. I've stopped using Valor in a lot of places because it's just a bad feel with Return to the Fields. I've just seen so many games where it's like, well, that game's over.
Yeah, we should just fucking stab Return to the Fields. Just stab it till it's dead.
Sidebar.
Sorry.
Well, Laney Kingdom of Shadows looks like the next one, Alejandro.
Eric Swanson, who's playing Laney Kingdom of Shadows, and a bunch of really interesting tech, right? He played... What did he play? I don't remember. He probably at the gates, and I played Vanquish turn 1 actually. I wanted to save the king plot for another turn. He played a red keep and an Iron Throne. At least they were in play. Maybe they were set up. So that was, I think the Iron Throne was played turn 1. So that kind of felt bad. I had a shift from I had put an Aegon into Shadows, and I was anticipating like doing that maybe. And instead I had to like change my plan around to go grab this lay siege and get rid of this Iron Throne so I can continue messing with his locations. But I ended up winning an Intrigue challenge turn 1, which was really important. I took 2 cards out of his hand, and then I won a military challenge with Lucaro. I took another card, and I was dancing when one of the cards that I pulled was a Robert Strong. I was like, either one of my guys is about to die because there's another Robert Strong in the dead pile or in the Shadows area, but he didn't have enough money to play it, or I just got rid of the worst card in the matchup for myself. So
yeah,
I was really excited for that. He played. I think I went into King Plot after that, and then the turn after that, he played his whole turn to pinch a powder my Drogo that had a dupe on it to then be able to Valor the turn after. So he played he invested a lot of resources to make this happen. And then on my turn, I overwhelming Denver the dupe back in, and he didn't realize that the dupe would stay. So he called over a jug. He's like, yeah. And then, essentially after that, he picked up the cards. So that, that felt pretty good.
On that one.
We might have gone another round. There was a turn where I pulled a put to the sword. So I think we might have gone another round, but Recaro claimed to put to the sword that was spicy, and I didn't see coming. Let's see, and then what?
Yeah, he had two of them in there. He said
so. He picked up the cards. But I played around a second put to the sword by triggering Kotha. He's like, This is weird. I've never seen this, but I don't think I want to lose to another one. So, and then he just played the cards. So that was it. Turn after that, then. I played against Austin in the King of Swiss match, he was playing Night's Watch Valerian Steel.
And everything was above the table and no mistakes were made.
It was the cleanest game I've ever witnessed. and I watched almost the entire game. It was
Right,
just
right,
too clean to avoid.
Yeah, so let's see. I set up really well. I set up Womb of the World, Marini's Market, Plaza of Pride. He set up Kalidas, Three Finger Hop, Underground Vault. No dupe. So
Kill it.
Open it
Kill
up.
Kill it.
And
Kill it.
he was very surprised by the Valor opening. I'm not sure that if he still didn't know that we had it or he just wasn't expecting to turn one. And he opened his anti.
This seems to be becoming a theme.
He opened Champions Challenge, which was his anti-Sea of Blood tech plot, right? He's like, I'm gonna establish a board, I'm gonna cancel out your military challenge, and then we're gonna play after this. And in testing, we found out that Kalidas is a really big problem, and that Three Finger Hob is really, really annoying. And so I was very happy to snap those guys off, and kind of dominated the game from there, right? Just I had a Womb. I might have had a Gotho turn one. I don't even remember. I think I just had it all.
But you felt like you were so far behind that you thought you might draw 3 cards one turn.
Then what happened was we were going through the motions, yeah. And I draw a card, and then I accidentally grab 2 cards, and I see what should be the third card, right? The card that I have illegally seen now. So I turn to Austin and I say, "Hey, I accidentally saw the third card." He's like, let's call a judge over, figure out what happens. We call a judge over. Murdoch comes over, who's the marshal, and we tell him what happened. And Murdoch's like, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. I have to disqualify you from the game. Like, I have to give you a game loss. And I was like, ha, 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 ha. And he kept a straight face. Really? I'm like, what? And at this point, Andres and maybe Joe, I don't remember who else was. Table 2 was looking over, and they were going, "What?" And
it was it was Andres and Joe Zimmer. They just like stopped playing and looked over, like, "Huh? What? Game loss?
Yeah,
for a card drawn?"
Wait, so was he? So
no, he
was he
fucking
with you? Because it's like so weird, like like in context of like what happened in my semifinal game, which we'll go over eventually. But like,
so
okay, all right, go on.
Did we not have
he was like, once 12 people were staring at him, he was like, "Well, I'll go check."
Go check the floor rules. Like, I'll go double check the floor rules. So he went and double checked the floor rules. We told him like the bottom card is known information. We shuffled in the rest. Well, we showed him the card that I saw, and then we continued playing. And then immediately after, Austin marshals the direwolf attachment onto one of these guys that have no attachment stick weapon. So we had a judge come over.
Yeah.
This time it was found out. He marshaled it. He triggered his agenda to draw a card. I had wombed at this point, so we already had a wombed card into play. And then the judge came over and he rewound as much as he could. At the time I was a little salty because he was going to disqualify me because we had gotten past a point that I had more information than my opponent did and we couldn't do anything about it. But this time we actually did get past a point, and he's like, "Nah, just keep playing. Do you guys want an active judge?" And so I was a little annoyed and a little bit, weirded out by the situation. But like I said, we just played out the end of the turn, and basically, I wanted from the Valor turn 1. So that was my day. It was a good day.
I mean, I would have expected Austin to need a babysitter for the entire tournament, but now we know that you both need one.
Well, I mean, when the marshal tells you that you're going to be disqualified for what is a very minor infraction, I think that I was not unreasonable for me to be a little bit frazzled at that point in the game. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
plus it's the last game of the day, and you're just like, and you're both already in the cut.
Essentially,
kind of like whatever.
Already.
Like, tightness starts to go out the window.
I mean, that happened to me at Nationals, but this guy had a complete card out of his deck, like wasn't even there, and he went to Skagos for a cat, and then he's like, I don't know where it's at.
Yeah, God, let's not relive that nightmare.
So I mean, that's two different fractions right there. Like you saw a card, and then there's. Yeah.
Yeah, people are often like, "Oh, how are these people like, in the semifinals or whatever? Like, how are they making these mistakes?" Like, it's a long day.
Long day.
It's 2 long
Yeah.
days. For
Very
instance,
long day.
Yes, the players usually get better the higher you go, but also, everybody's human.
Yeah.
Even 6 Targ Sea of Blood games is still essentially 3 real games. 3 real games in a row can be pretty tiring.
How long is this?
But
well, I mean, you ended. Yeah, I mean, you ended at the top, so must have been doing something right.
And I'm sure it was an auspicious sign for the rest of his tournament.
Yeah.
He got King of Swiss.
Spoilers.
Spoiler.
What are you talking about? He definitely had a good day too.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Right, Alejandro?
Right.
I can just hear Alejandro punching Alex through his fucking screen. I can hear the sound of the fist.
Moving ahead to spoilers, let's talk about the cut now.
Yeah, I can talk. Mine was pretty short.
Who wants to go first? Shortest first.
Sam Bratz, who was playing the Night's Watch Conclave deck, who was playing 2 Watches on the Wall, who was playing Outwit and Trixie Bird, and he had an insane turn 1. He told me it was insane himself, right? Like, I don't know. It was really strong. I'm in a position where I either Valor here, potentially get outwitted, or return to the fields, or I don't Valor here and he doesn't outwit, and now I have 2 more plots to get through before I can Valor. It just felt like a really bad situation. We flip our plots, turn 2, I Valor, he outwits. Like, well, there we go. I figured out that I need to win on like plot 9, but our turn 1 was really slow, and he's playing a deck where he has 2 hands, and he has a lot of triggers to remember. He's got a lot of things that he can do. So we got to plot 7. I think that I was turning the game around. He says that he had a lot of gas left, but I don't know. I think that I had essentially turned the game around, but we didn't have enough time, so we finished the game. He was up like, I don't know, 10-2 or something. And that was my tournament.
Yeah.
The first round, no bye after a 6-0 run in Swiss.
Ooh.
You got your bye in the Swiss.
Ooh.
The king of Swiss curse is real.
Yeah.
I was happy with the way I played. I wish I had a mulligan for a matchup. Just give me a different one. I definitely felt like there was plenty of winnable matchups. Even Sam's was winnable, but the start was really strong, and I just kind of ran into it turn 2. So if I play that differently, if we play a little faster, maybe a lot of things, but that's where my tournament ended.
Yeah,
and it was a loss to Sam, so I'm not upset about that. Sam's a great player, so fine to go out on that note for me.
Sure. Nice job. Congrats on the King of Swiss, day 1B. And like you said, I mean, lose to Sam, that's nothing to be ashamed of. CT?
My top 32 game was against AJ.
64.
64 game.
Yeah.
That was 64 game. Was against AJ. That game is on stream.
Yeah, go watch that shit. It's hilarious.
Just watch it. It's just a great fucking game.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
One of my all-time most embarrassing career mistakes is in that game. So that's pretty. That's great. You laugh at me, call me stupid.
Talking about the
let's not worry about the details. Let's not worry about the fact that I claimed a Horse Lord instead of my duped Masande, knowing that I'm flipping into Vanquish the next turn, like some kind of idiot. We won't worry about that. We won't worry about that part. But that was a great game, and like AJ and I always have really great games. Like, we enjoy playing each other. You can feel the energy. I'm super glad that was like a streamed match. It was just kind of those situations where his deck was so spicy. I don't think it was playing Doran's game. It wasn't playing Secret Schemes. but it was like filled with vengeances and Viper's Eyes and just anything he can use against Sea of Blood. Which I don't think he actually played any Sea of Blood in the Swiss, which is surprising.
That's very.
I have a question for you, CT.
What?
So I find that you have a rapport with a lot of players, particularly with AJ too, that allows you guys to both be very comfortable with each other in your games. Do you feel like you are more advantaged by sort of the comfort level in which you play these games with some people, or do you think that they are more advantaged by it?
I don't know. I think that if I am comfortable, it does give me an edge. I think that things like being comfortable with who you're playing against and not being intimidated by them, and even other things like open deck lists and all these kinds of things give you a lot of advantages. And I would say that I like being more comfortable than not. I like having more knowledge than not. So these things are really helpful, especially playing against Martell and knowing the opponent. So like the comfort level is high because I play with AJ so much. I know how AJ plays. AJ knows how I play. I
guess let me be more specific, because like it seemed like you were both kind of spewing off information about your hands, but it seemed to me like it was more advantageous for you to know AJ's hand than it was for him to know yours. So there was like this sort of exchange of like, we're playing this game very like friendly, you know, we're going to kind of be revealing these tells to each other, but I felt like you were more advantaged in that scenario because like
our deck list was a lot more straightforward, and his deck is way more reliant on tricks. Yeah, so. I definitely can see that too. Maybe if he, like, I could see him being a lot more reserved if we didn't have open deck lists. Mm-hmm. And me just not 100% knowing whether he does have card A or card B or whatever. Instead of the scenario that we did have, which was just, is he seeing card A or card B? A big part of the game is like, he was so behind on board from the beginning, he didn't really get very many opportunities to like bluff cards like Vengeance, which would have made me obviously challenge completely differently. I think if I had to have been afraid of 2 gold being up in a lot of circumstances, I felt very comfortable in the game because I think even though I was having to give up a lot of unopposed challenges early, my hand was always full and always had sort of an important tool for the matchup. Which made me feel like I was going to turn the game eventually as long as I could keep my hand up. So I think that's probably, it has a lot to do with my comfort. Usually the more behind I am, the less likely I am to bullshit. And obviously part of it is just like being on stream, we're obviously going to play up the antics a little bit more than we probably usually would. And such things of that nature. But yeah, it was a really good game, and there were mistakes made on both sides, and it still ended up being a pretty good game. So I'm pretty super proud of that one. I was lucky that AJ just kind of missed seeing a Vengeance in that game, which was pretty big. Recaro did a lot of work discarding some key cards, kind of like we were talking about from the Swiss. And it was very close. There was a lot of like military challenges that I just won by the exact amount, or I had to bait some triggers, like he had a Begging Brother and a Gaston in a scenario where I had Drogon out. That was pretty key. It was a really cool game. It may have looked fairly one-sided, but I don't think AJ would have called it a smash by any stretch, and I probably wouldn't have either. So that game was cool, and I won that one. And then top 32 game, I played against Patrick from DC, and he was playing the DC Lanny Kingdom, which is a pretty spicy build. It was not running like any loyals. It was using Hollow Hill. Flea Bottom was restricted instead of trade routes, which it obviously like really piled on the characters that were usable with Flea Bottom in that scenario. And I guess they got the memo that opening Valor on your opponent is pretty good. So my setup was like Recaro, Horse Lord, economy, I feel like. And I had a Gifts in hand, so I was kind of planning to go into our sort of default open king plot, try and slow them down scenario. He set up 3 cards in Shadows and a duped Iron Throne, which I was not thrilled to see. He opened Valor into my king plot. So that was hard because I couldn't really... I could get... I think I got like 2 more bodies back down. Or maybe I played a body in a womb? I'm trying to remember. I think my econ was in Alario's estate. That part's kind of fuzzy. But basically, him valoring me set me back. And he obviously had like piled on guys in Shadows. I wasn't going to be able to hit the throne without putting multiple resources into it, so I wasn't able to get it. And then he got Red Keep pretty quickly after that. So I just kind of like, I just didn't really recover from that first Valor, and he just sort of stayed ahead of me. We went like six or 7 plots before he got up on me like 12-5 or something, and I finally conceded on like my Wintertide dead draw that I just couldn't play any cards. So, the Shadow deck was our quote-unquote bad match anyway, and I think their version of the deck played way harder into our was way stronger into our weaknesses than even like the version we were like playing against in the test house. So, and it had like Hound and stuff, so I could get big power challenges. It wasn't relying on using cards like Cersei or Tyrion or these more expensive cards that the Lanny decks need more time to develop with. He hit like he had 2 Marauders triggers very early that hit like my 4s and my 6s, which obviously we have a lot of good cards in those cost ranges. So yeah, I got Lanny shadowed. He just totally stomped me, and that was the end of my run.
All right. Congrats.
F.
F. Let's move on to Alex Black. Had the best.
Yeah, so I ran hot as fuck.
Yep.
Obviously. It was the night before, and a little bird told me that I was going to play against Reinhardt in the cut.
Mm-hmm.
And a different little bird told me that Reinhardt was playing sneak attack. So I'm like, fuck, I'm dead. So like, I stayed up. Oh, maybe it was the same one. I'm not naming any names though. But
listen, you're full of shit. There's no birds in Minnesota in February. So
there are certainly no white squirrels. Anyway, so I stayed up like way too late. I was pretty bummed. I was like thinking this is going to be really tough. Obviously we didn't mention it too much, but we did swap deck lists in the cut for 5 minutes before each round. So, my opponents were definitely aware of my valor. I don't remember exactly how I set up, but I know it was character light. And Reinhardt opened sneak attack, and I think I opened maybe like March to the Wall or something. I really don't remember much about the game other than the fact that I didn't give him much in terms of like there was no way he could blow me out turn 1 on one challenge. I had like a duped Plaza and a Market and like a guy, like a 2-cost guy. Let him make his big challenge, and then I counterattacked with a Kotho and a Masande, and the game kind of just got off to the races from there. I also king plotted him pretty early on when I had gifts for the Widow, I believe. And I don't know, I'm sure I'm fucking this game up, but basically the crux of it was the mirror wasn't as simple as I thought it was. There's a lot of play to the counterattack, which is a bit foreshadowing here, but I was able to beat Reinhardt in that game. So my next matchup, I believe I played against Luke from North Carolina. He was playing Lanny Shadows. I opened King Plot on him, blew up his Red Keep on turn 1, and the game kind of spiraled out of control from there for him. I got really lucky. My draw was decent. His draw was probably average. And there was a critical turn where he gold mined his second Red Keep instead of just playing it to the board and sort of taking another turn off. And I think if he had done that, maybe the game would have been extended. Top 16, I played against Joe Miranda, who's playing Bear Cohor. He set up double duped Stannis Reducer and a 0 drop economy location. So, needless to say, about every point in this game, I thought I was dead.
Yeah.
Like, look, top 16 was my goal. I'd made 3 top 32s at Worlds the previous 3 years. I really just wanted to get to the next step. You know, I'm here. I was thinking about what I was going to eat. I was thinking about getting to the airport. But Joe just kept missing triggers. I mean, you know, Joe's a good player. He's, I mean, arguably a great player when he's practiced, but he was obviously rusty and he kept missing things. Like Stannis draw triggers. He forgot Renown on Stannis with a Lightbringer in play.
Oof.
And then even down to the last turn where he, even after all of these mistakes, I mean, I have a Drogo and a 2-claim pot, and he has duped Stannis and 2 other characters in play. My March to the Wall has been used. And I make a military challenge, and he claims the dupe and another character, and my eyes just light up. And I see a path to victory. I mean, if he just claims the other 2 characters and then the Stannis dupe, you know, then the Valor was gone at this point. The March was gone at this point.
So you got by attrition, which is really the only way to get Stannis is just attrition.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, even though he was up like 13 to something, like he scooped the next turn when he wasn't going to have a board state, which I thought with like 10 or 15 minutes left in play, I thought actually was pretty honorable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he could have probably played the game out slowly and like maybe got 1 on power on time, but he knew he was dead. Like if the game like went to a reasonable conclusion. So.
Yeah.
Then my top 8 game was on stream. My top 8 game was on stream against Chris Heinrich. He was playing Not to Watch Kraken. You know, even though we had exchange deck lists, that Clytus with no dupe was in play on turn 1, and he wasn't playing Return to the Field. So I'm not sure what he was trying to hit with the Forgotten Plans that he opened, but I opened Valor.
Probably thought you were going to king plot turn 1.
Yeah,
right?
perhaps. And
maybe he just forgot the Valor. Like maybe people are like deleting the Valor from their memory because they don't expect you to have it, even after they just read it.
Yeah, maybe. I had a really weird setup. I set up like Plaza, like useless card in Shadows and 2/2 cost Chuds. Like I had a mulligan into like a pretty
there
bad
is something to be
setup.
said for even when Valor was really heavy in the meta, people were not opening it, right? Like we were in a unique position, and so was the Land of Shadows list, that you just have so much action economy that you can open it without crippling yourself, which is not something that any of the standard mid-range decks can do. They if they open it, they're having a really bad turn 1, and their opponent's having a regular turn 1. So,
yeah,
Right.
Absolutely.
So on turn 1, I draw back up. He has a White Tree in play, or an Iron Throne in play. Marshall's a White Tree, and I have Lay Siege. So, I mean, the people on the cast can attest that, like,
You're an idiot.
I'm an idiot, but also I was sort of lobbying for cutting the Lay Siege. Don't have a lot of experience with the card. Definitely didn't know the interaction, which is stupid. I should have known it. And it was the first time it had come up for me. But I played it in marshalling to try and blow up the White Tree, when of course it was already knelt and not an eligible target. So I ended up having to play it on the Iron Throne, when I could have just waited till standing phase, and as long as he doesn't name Lay Siege with White Tree, I'm good to blow or with Iron Throne, I'm good to blow the White Tree up. It was very strange because by the time the ruling came down, we were already in plot 2. He had already flipped Ravages of War. And this was a plot that I remembered when looking at his deck list, I thought was very interesting. And on setup, I actually prioritized playing the Shadow of the East into play, even though it had no legal targets, because I kind of wanted him to gimp his a turn by playing the Ravages at some point, thinking that perhaps I had an Aegon in Shadows. and it was just weird because by the time the ruling came down on the lay siege, we had already revealed our plots, and there was never any discussion of going back and redoing plots. So once the dupe from the Iron Throne was gone, he then had to sacrifice a location. He sacrificed the Iron Throne, and then just kind of had a middling turn, and I blew the White Tree up with a put to the torch that turn. So, I mean, all in all, it really, again, it came down to that Valor and just Chris not having a lot of economy. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the crux of the game. After those first two turns, there wasn't really, I mean, there were a few turns where he played characters out, but I would go first with 2 initiative and, wipe the board. So yeah, and then I know there was on stream, I don't know, Groth, if you can attest to this, but there was some discussion that like people thought he wasn't allowed to save the Iron Throne. That wasn't the case. He saved it with the dupe, and then we resolved the plot that had been revealed, and he chose to sacrifice the Iron Throne to the Ravages of War trigger.
Yeah, I don't know why people would think you couldn't save with the dupe. Doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Trigger? Or the
Yeah.
or the Ravages of War.
That? Yeah. This was for the Well, no. So
Ravages is sacrifice, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we were resolving the lay siege. I had to choose a legal target.
Yeah.
Iron Throne was a legal target. I also had like a King's Road in play or something. Yeah. But like obviously I'd choose at least the Iron Throne.
Yep.
And in that circumstance, so he got rid of the dupe. Then in the same motion, we resolved the Ravages because that's where we were when we were stopped.
Yeah.
Was in the when revealed part of the plot phase.
Yep.
So it looked a lot like the Iron Throne kind of just went straight to the bin, even though the dupe came off and then the Iron Throne was
sacrificed. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and at the end of the game, I apologize. People joked about if I apologized for Sea of Blooding him. I wasn't apologizing for that. I was apologizing because during the ruling, the judge did something which I really didn't like, but kind of said like it's up to your opponent, like if to give you the take back or not. And I kind of asked Chris like, hey, what do you think? And I felt bad about it afterwards because I think that like it wasn't really Chris's responsibility to make that call there, and I felt bad about asking him, and so that's what I was apologizing for. I was apologizing for asking him if I could take it back.
Yeah.
Really, it should just like be what the floor rule is what should happen.
Yeah.
And we just move forward.
You just lose the dupe of the Iron Throne and move on. Yeah.
So that's all that was.
Yeah.
And then my top 4 game was against Eric Green. And he was playing Night's Watch Valyrian Steel. Another turn 1 Valor circumstance. Another Vitus 3-finger hob setup.
Ooh.
Another game where both players don't know the rules of the game.
Sort of, yeah. Yeah, so Eric flipped Barring and then put a Flea Bottom alley into play and then triggered
it.
Put the character into play and drew the card, and then a spectator pointed out that Barring the Gates was the plot.
Yep.
So we had to go back, and basically the way that the floor rules work, Eric ends up revealing his entire hand to me, and I choose a card that gets shuffled back into the deck, which was particularly brutal because it was the card he was going to put into play with the Flea Bottom alley, but the rest of his hand was all 5 and 6 and 7 drops.
No,
so it really neutered his turn, and then from there things kind of spiraled out of control.
A spectator. The identity of Sam Bratz will be kept hidden for third parties protection.
Yeah, they did kick Bratz out of the play area for that. But and then the final where
well, that's not as bad as L5R. There was like a big turn at the end of the game, like the final game, and they kicked the guy out too for saying, because the judge is supposed to be there active, right, Alejandro?
The stream matches.
So like that happened.
And spectators are not even.
Yeah, not these games. This wasn't on stream.
They're supposed to get a judge, so the judge intervenes.
Yeah.
So I don't want to focus on that too much.
No, Like, moving on.
Pertinent. I mean, obviously, if Sam doesn't mention anything to a judge, then maybe that game goes in a different direction. But if Sam mentions it to a judge and the judge comes over and tries to rectify the game state, like basically, I think the game plays out basically the same.
Same way. Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
In the final, I mulliganed into King's Road, but had to set up a Kotho.
Francis like snap kept. He kept so fast, and so like he kept. And I know we tried. We're gonna get Francis on later. Unfortunately, his was having some audio issues, so we're gonna have to do a separate interview with him. But I should have, looking back on it, I should have opened King Plot. He had a womb in play and a pretty small board, and the snap keep to me just indicated that he had a Kotho in his opening hand. But I got a little tunnel visioned. I had the King's Road, so I opened Vanquish, and sort of a similar scenario to what happened with Reinhardt and I just wasn't able to quite have a explosive enough attack, and then he was able to make a big counter attack on me. Highly recommend going and watching the game. It was super interesting for me. There were some really hard decisions. Like, I probably should have still attacked with the Kotho and forced him to defend on turn 1. I think there were a lot of ways I could have played that game differently and potentially won the game. Even though it was kind of an overwhelming win for Francis, that is kind of the nature of these Sea of Blood mirrors, is like sometimes one decision, Reinhardt making him go first instead of me on that turn, for instance.
Yeah.
Things like that. Those kind of things end up being like really big deals in those mirrors. So
yeah.
Call me crazy, but I know people hate Targ Sea of Blood, like on a probably majority level, but I find most of the games that were streamed over the weekend, even the mirrors, like fascinating to watch in a way that's more interesting than like when Greyjoy maybe was top of the meta and there was Greyjoy mirrors all the time. Like, I found these games to be far more interesting to watch.
I just think there are more variables and unknowns at play in the mirrors here. You have a lot of like cards in hand stuff that matters. Like, you have womb triggers that matters. You have shadows cards that matter. Sequencing things. Like, there's, I think the fact that there's so much more unknown information when you're going into the first turn, like challenges phase in the Targ Sea of Blood mirrors, that it's just not the same thing as like putting a couple 7-drops into play and like, you know what I mean? Like, there's not unknown information being.
Greyjoy's not flipping 5 cards off the top trying to get some spicy bomb.
Exactly.
To like wing a
it's not
matchup.
Quite the same as like how many saves do you have?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just inherently more interesting, which I'm not saying like makes it okay that Targ is where it's at, but like it is not as unbearable to watch from a community standpoint.
I agree.
All that being said, I think Kotho is probably enemy number 1 if they're if and when a new restricted list comes out. I highly expect Kotho to be on that. The card,
I think everyone agrees Kotho's kind of the
card
number
is just. It was one thing when you literally had to say goodbye to 2 cards in your hand, but now there are just so many ways to recur it. Every Targ deck should be playing 3 Kotho, 3 Missandei. Sometimes you're getting 2 characters for free. You're seeding your discard pile for overwhelming numbers. It's basically just a free 5-cost, 5-strength military icon, and sometimes intrigue. That's just way above curve, way above power level for the deck. And so, that was one of the big takeaways for me.
Leave the rest of the deck alone, though. That's all that needs to be hit.
I'm kind of on that boat too. I mean, I think Womb eventually probably is too good, but like personally, I'd be interested to see small changes and see what things shake out.
Let's put Khor Drogo on the restricted list. Let's see what happens.
Please. That's gonna be.
I know you're gonna say not Khor Drogo. But...
Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the restricted lists where they add 2 cards, because those decks a lot of times go from the best deck in the format to irrelevant unless they're getting another card like Klytus. But yeah, I don't think now is the time to have this conversation per se. But yeah, for me, I think Kotho was the most powerful card in my deck on the weekend. So to wrap that whole experience up, I think I was incredibly lucky. I mean, you have to be, I think, to get that far. But
yeah, especially
that being said, thanks. That being said, we did put a lot of work into the testing process, and I feel like if I don't have that support structure, there's definitely no way that I'm able to capitalize
how fortunate I was over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, it's another example of a group penetrating the tournament together and getting at least one member into the finals. It's
Groth, say penetrate again.
Penetrate.
Yeah.
Congratulations again.
The people finally got, after like 90 minutes of listening, they finally got what they really wanted.
They wanted that.
Saying penetrate.
Congratulations again. Any last words, guys?
Well, I just want to say
weekend as a whole.
I plan on this not being my last words as far as Game of Thrones is concerned.
God damn it.
And I just it was definitely something where going into the event, I was unsure. Where I was at with the game. Obviously having an incredibly successful weekend. And then that includes all of the success of the people I prepared with and my friends, helps. But I think it felt like, it didn't feel like a wake, like it didn't feel like a funeral. Like I was going there kind of expecting it to have that feel. And
not with my unflappable positivity,
and it just felt like a normal Worlds. And for me, that said, like, we haven't done everything we can do with this game. And so,
would you say that not all the design space has been covered?
I would definitely say that. So yeah, I mean, that's my takeaway, right? Is like, I don't know what capacity I'll be around, but I definitely have no intention of being done, which was not necessarily something I thought I'd be saying today.
Definitely.
Last week.
Maybe I just didn't see it, but it didn't seem like anyone there was in a state of mind where they were like, oh, this is it. Like, I'm never going to see these people again. Like, nobody thought that. Everyone was having a great time. Everyone had, like, I mean, the people who you expected to do well did well. Like, super props to Francis for pulling through that field. Like, especially, like, I'm kind of glad that, like, the last official Worlds had, like, this murderer's row of a cut, but, like, and we're always just like, well, oh, we want an American to win, or we want a European to win, and then, like, Francis is just like, fuck you guys, Canada wins this year. Like, that was great. It was nice seeing somebody, like, probably not super expected to win, take it down as well.
I think that would be fair to say that he was not expected to win going in.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I mean, he played really clean games from what I can tell. He ended up beating Tom in the cut, which we didn't really talk much about how Mackenzie did, but he made the cut and then won his first game. I think lost to Francis in the top 32. But yeah, I mean, Francis had to play a whole host of great players on his way to win. So really, congratulations to him. We intend on doing an interview with him soon. So
yeah, it might even be on this episode. It depends on how long it takes me to
hopefully that
put it together. All 9 fucking takes of this thing.
Woo!
Yeah, I mean, it was a great weekend. Obviously, it winter came on Sunday, which was pretty interesting.
It came all over us.
We got like a foot of snow that night and that morning, and the tournament, I mean, it's still fired, and I think everyone showed up. So there was a DQ based on a deck issue, but other than that, like, I'm mostly looking at focusing on the positive things about the event. I will say I'm feeling a little wistful about not going back to FFG Center. I know for all the people talk about it, like, I have a lot of really good memories there. So that'll be a little weird, but overall, great weekend. And super happy and looking forward to the stuff that's yet to come. So
the blank to
Mm-hmm.
come.
Nope.
Oh God, no.
Damn, boy.
Damn, boy.
That's a big boy.
Big ass boy.
Oh God.
Well, we wrapping this boy up.
Yeah.
We wrapping this thick boy up.
It is.
This is a thick episode. This episode is thick. Damn.
The fucking reserve value on this episode is not 0. Dog, it is.
Boy.
It's a thick ass reserve. Thick boy.
Well, I mean, I don't think we really know a catchphrase or whatever yet, but
You've been hanging out with Triple H and the Mongoose.
And the motherfucking mongoose. And don't forget to check your reserve.
Check your reserve, baby.
Have a good night. Have you seen the Groundhog's Day commercial yet?
Zero Reserve, part
Oh my gosh.
8.
What happened? Why are they barking like that?
There's-
Alex,
Say it.
go.
Cue the sad music.
Yeah. Go.
So Kevin Austin rented a car for a single day. We went to all these great places. We had the juiciest of Lucy's. Then we went back the next day to return Kevin's car and pick up my car rental, where unfortunately my debit card was declined. Not because I'm broke, even though, you know, I'm not rich or anything, but because there was a fucking account level error on my debit card. And
Damn, bro, who's running your bank?
yeah, well, the people over on Whidbey Island. I blame you.
You should have known.
I don't know what they're doing on the island, but
You should have known when the first question on the questionnaire for the rental was, "Have you ever played combo in this city before?"
shit.
And you checked yes.
So then Kevin Austin, the hero of this entire trip, rents another car for the rest of the week. And as we're leaving in the exact same model car we had the previous day, I turn to Kevin and I say,